Namibia has reverted back to stage 3 of the state of emergency for a period of 16 days. This follows the continuous adjustment to national response strategies meant to curb the escalating threat of COVID-19. How will this move most likely have an impact on the Namibian economy? Well, Likukela, Economist, now joins us to answer this question and more. Mali, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on GMN. Mali, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Good Morning Namibia. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we're breaking up and cannot clearly get you.
Okay, we're going to just try and reconnect with you in a second. We'll be right back shortly.
All right.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back after this.
As it was announced by the head of the state and clarified by the minister on the implementation of the new policy change, this is to be applied with immediate effect. But of course, for uniformity of application of implementation, it was necessary that we give guidance unpacking the policy change so that we communicate this clearly to all the healthcare workers in the country. So we are in the process of finalizing the circular, which will be going to all the health facilities so that all people understand this policy and apply it in a standardized manner. Because the higher level statement, people might not understand it the same way. So there is need to simplify and
Welcome back. Just before the break, we were chatting to Likukela, Economist, who talked to us about how the new regulations around stage 3, specifically the curfew, could have an impact on the Namibian economy. Mali, thank you for being patient. Welcome back to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning, Nina.
Mali, the Namibian government announced that the entire country will revert to from stage 4 to stage 3 of Namibia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But what possible implications do you foresee this call having?
Yeah, Nina, to understand the possible implication of this new regulation to the economy, one needs to understand the interplay between household, business, and the government. These are the three sectors that makes up the economy. And what this regulation basically means is that the interaction, the process, the exchange of money and resources between these three entities will slow down. And when the exchange of money within these entities slow down, that is what is translated into the slow economy. Now, the regulations themselves are not dangerous. What is dangerous is what happens to the economy when these regulations are put in place. Number one, with regards to household, we expect to see a loss of income that results from the losses of jobs, losses of skills, the decline in productivity, also the cost of doing business and the cost of living. These things translate into a negative impact on the businesses. Why? Because then the businesses would make no profit, businesses will not grow, business will not invest because there is no demand that is coming from the household as a result of the regulation. When these two things are put together, it translates into the government's loss of revenue and income that comes from taxes, profit taxes, income taxes from the workers. And so you see a start or a beginning of a vicious cycle that needs to be broken. Otherwise, the economy as we know it, as a system of exchange of money, will deteriorate and the standard of living of this country will be jeopardized. So these regulations, these are the possible initial impact of reverting back to to stage 3 of the response.
Well, these COVID-19, waters are waters that have been uncharted by the entire world, and you're talking about breaking this vicious cycle. We don't know how long this virus is going to be around, what further implications might come with it, for the economy. How do we go about breaking this cycle?
Yeah, actually the ultimate idea is to break the cycle. But given the fact that we are still in the crisis, we cannot begin to talk about breaking the cycle. What we can begin to talk about is how to mitigate the impact of this vicious cycle, because it is with us right now. So we have seen many countries have come to the party with various response mechanisms. Some are monetary, some are fiscal policies, some are policies that directly affect the affected parties. So for Namibia, we have seen government stepping in with the rescue package at the beginning of the crisis, of which, of course, we have seen that there were challenges. But I do believe that if that package was not in place, probably the situation would be worse. So what government needs to do to mitigate the impact is to explore various avenues of finding resources to help the most vulnerable and the most affected parts or groups of society. And these are the informal sector, the vulnerable groups that rely on the welfare and those sectors such as tourism. Government needs to find resources, I don't know from where, and target these resources to these respective sectors or entities instead of a blanket rescue, because a blanket rescue would basically mean that some of the resources would go to people that do not really need it.
Mali, would you then also be of the opinion that that stimulus package that you're referring to this morning was rolled out a bit prematurely? Because, as you say, it wasn't very targeted and it was a blanket response to the situation. Whereas if we had waited just a little bit longer to see really which sectors are really feeling the bite, there could have been a more focused and targeted approach.
Yes, and like you have rightly put forward, this is a new crisis that the world is facing, and Namibia being part of the world. It was very difficult for the government to wait. At that point in time, it was believed that any day longer would create havoc, the disease or the pandemic would create havoc. But I do agree with you that had we waited a little bit longer, we would have collected enough data about the pandemic, about the affected people. So our response would have been more targeted than it was. And I do agree with the majority, with the public consensus that the rescue package could have taken us a few more miles had it been designed in such a way. But we have to understand, at that point in time, we had very little information to work on. Government had very little information to work on about the pandemic and about the affected people. So as the leaders had always been saying that we are going to build the ship as we sail. It is a learning experience. And so based on what we have seen at the beginning of the pandemic and the attempts, we are now, I do believe now that government is in a better position to put together a package that can be more responsive to the situation on the ground.
Let's quickly focus on the tourism sector for just 1 second. One of the sectors that we know has been hardest hit by this state of emergency and this global pandemic. How much longer do you think this sector, can hold on with borders being closed?
Yeah, very good question. I think from where I am sitting, the sector will be able to hold a little bit longer depending on its ability to switch. What do I mean by that? We know traditionally the tourism sector has been supported by foreign markets. These are tourists from Europe, from China, from where. Now with the borders closed, there is no way you can get tourists from those countries. So if the sector is going to survive this pandemic, it should immediately switch from foreign to domestic market. The ability and the effectiveness of the strategies that will be put in place for the domestic markets to thrive and to come up to life will determine how longer this sector will take. Now remember, this sector depends on the expenditure power. The reason why the foreign market was dominating or supporting the industry is because they had money to spend on our local economy, on our local tourist economy. Now, we know that COVID has wiped out the funding, wiped out the ability to spend. Think now of the domestic market. How much worse has the COVID affected the domestic market? So it is now for the tourist sector, captain leaders of the industry, to come together and put a package that is looking inward, not outward. I know that a government is working on a package right now, but I have seen that a larger element of that still looks on the tradition. And I'm saying, yes, that might be the case, but right now, with the borders closed, our package must be inward-oriented for the sector to survive.
In an effort to, in a bid to raise more funds and keep our economy afloat, the state will be auctioning fishing quotas on the open market to raise these funds to assist also against the fight against coronavirus. How do you see this specific one playing out, Mali?
Well, this is going to be a very interesting development. Why? Because this auctioning of fishing quota all over the world is a very rare policy action to take. And one must begin to ask himself as to why is it rare? Why is it that so many countries have undertaken this? There must be a challenge somewhere there. But nonetheless, from where I'm sitting, I expect to see a very interesting process of this particular policy issue, given the fact that it is very, very linked to the current situation in the fishing sector, that is of the fish rot. So in as much as this idea is a very noble idea, it's a very good idea, but the fact that it's surrounded by the shadow of the fish rot, it makes people to be a little bit hesitant and doubtful of the original intent. But nonetheless, if policies are put in place which are transparent, because that is the biggest worry of people, I do believe that maybe we could yield some money for the government. However, experience elsewhere have shown that countries that have taken this have immediately abandoned it. Look at Russia, look at Estonia. Research have shown that this country, imagine Russia is a very big country with very good policies, but they have to abandon this. Why? Because of the challenges that are involved with enforcement. The fishing industry was saying this could be a breeding ground for illegal fishing. This concern must be researched. It should not be just rubbished away because these are valid concerns. But I'm not saying it cannot work. It can work, but they'll address these concerns from the industry, from the people that are on the ground, for us to go through with this.
Another move that government also made that, raised eyebrows was the billions of dollars in loan which they got from the IMF to sort of cover their budgetary deficit. With all of this happening, when do you foresee the Namibian economy recovering from this?
Yeah, we have to understand that all these efforts are attempts by government to make sure that the recovery happens as quickly as possible. However, we must be also mindful that these are commitments. These are long-term financial commitments that we are making which need to be repaid at some point in time. And we know that in order for a country to honor its financial commitment, it has to have a repayment plan.
Yes.
My biggest concern with regards to the IMF loan is that I do not really see the repayment plan that government has in place to ensure that this money will be repaid on time accordingly. Because if this is not happening, we are heading towards a potential debt trap.
Yes.
Studies after study have shown how many countries have been locked into debt traps by IMF loan, not particularly this particular loan, but even traditional loans that the IMF have put together.
Right.
We have seen countries being locked in because they do not have a repayment plan. If government has a repayment plan, let it be known so that government puts these fears at rest.
Mali, thank you so much for your time this morning. Lovely speaking to you as always.
You are welcome and have a blessed day.
I was economist Mali Likukela speaking to us this morning on what the effects of reverting back to stage 3 could have on the Namibian economy.